with the incredible Query and Fairing. It's good to see everybody here. Excited to talk through all of this. We have Samir from Query and Mike from Fairing. We're going to talk all things incredible stuff with ads. We're going to talk all things incredible stuff with measuring your data. We're going to have some Q&A at the end as well, so you get to talk to these professionals and get to ask them all of the amazing questions that you want about your brand, about your store, and get the answers from the people that are actually doing it. First up, we have Samir at Query, who's going to be talking through the incredible full funnel, how to run your brand, how to scale it to the moon. We'll take it away and we'll talk with Query right now. Samir, it is yours, and we are excited to have you here.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Let's chat. Amazing. Let's wait for the slides to start. Cool. What and why? So we're going to be talking platform data and customer voice for unlocking growth. Like Colin said, I'm going to get a chance to chat for a little bit. We'll hear from Mike from Fairing. But I think one of the things that people forget is that marketing is inherently human, and we need to be talking to people and understanding what motivates them. You'll see this in this deck as well, but I say it pretty commonly in that measurement on the media side tells us what happened. It doesn't always tell us why it happened. Asking customers allows us to understand what was the motivator to actually get them to do what they did, and ultimately why did they purchase us. So we've all been here. Meta ROAS is flat. Revenue is up 20%. What do you believe? And so the reality of it is media and advertising measurement is just getting more complicated. It's getting harder because consumers are getting more sophisticated, complex, diversified. They have a lot of different ways to get more information than ever before. And the knowledge gap is shortening and speeding up. And so it means that we have to really think around how do we keep up with our customers? How do we keep up with what's actually matters to them? And how are we actually making sure that the work that we put out there, the ads that we put out there, where we reach them, how we speak to them, all relate to what actually motivates them to purchase. I think one of the things that we're starting to realize is the world of media arbitrage is ending, where it was just a matter of if you got in front of the consumer, that was good enough. Now it's really easy for everyone to get in front of the right consumer. The hard part is understanding what motivates them to actually purchase from you. So next 60 minutes, let's talk the what. So what platform data tells you, where it breaks, why it's structural. It's not a tooling issue. The why, we'll have Mike talk through this, what customer voice unlocks that no platform can see. And then we'll talk about actually putting those together. How do you operationalize both of them? Colin did a great job. Me, Samir, Mike, I'm going to share these slides after, so you'll have a chance to see all of this stuff as well. So platform data is a tactical instrument. It's meant for in-flight optimization. So are we spending enough? Are we spending enough on the right channels? Are we driving profit? Do we think that this is effectively working? It's really good for creative signals. It tells you, hey, this iteration is working really well. It's able to scale. People are engaging with it. And obviously for pacing, are we actually spending what we planned on spending? Are we on track? And these are all just really like day-to-day tactical things that we need to be doing as a media agency. But it's not really a strategic perspective. And that's where it breaks. It breaks because we get a lot of attribution conflict. So Meta says it drove a sale, Google says it drove another sale, et cetera, et cetera. We know we've all talked down this route before. View through inflation is a problem as well. Meta is absolutely going to be hungry to take advantage of every sale it can say it touched. Sometimes that's just as simple as it being seen. The other one is the idea of incrementality. And we've all talked about incrementality a lot. It tells you, platforms will tell you who came. Platforms will tell you who purchased, but they won't tell you if that person would have purchased with or without the ad itself. Things like branded search and retargeting, they look great, but 9 out of 10 times, they're not the most of incremental. This is where a lot of incrementality platforms come into play, but also ad platforms themselves have really focused on this. Meta is launching incrementality attribution. They've run conversion lift tests. Google allows lift tests as well. But It's not the platform's problem for why they're not able to actually optimize everything. And so we talk about this concept of measurement is multifaceted, right? Attribution from platforms is important. Multi-touch attribution from tools like Northbeam and Triple Whale are just as important. Incrementality testing and MMM with WorkMagic in-house just as important. But everything has a place. And so platforms get to see their own auctions, get to see clicks and impressions conversions. They know what happened inside their walled garden, but platforms can't see what each other is doing. And then all the tools I just talked about don't see offline, word of mouth, podcasts, out of home, long-term linear TV, and then just transparently what's happening in the customer's head. And I think the most important one, word of mouth. I think a lot of brands really undervalue how important word of mouth is, because to me, a high word of mouth brand means that you have product market fit. People are excited about your product, they want to talk about it, and they want to tell others about it. And you've hit something there that's really valuable, and just is never measured. So if you don't measure word of mouth, if you don't consider word of mouth as a key KPI, you may never know if you're just swimming upstream, meaning that you're spending a ton in advertising and you're being successful because you're just spending your way through it, or if you truly have something that you've tapped into that motivates people to purchase and get excited about. And that's why we talk about triangulation. Weekly for us is platform attribution. We want to know what's working. MTA sometimes on the weekly and daily side. Monthly, we're thinking about incrementality testing and MMMs, and then quarterly, definitely more MMM and incrementality testing as well. We really want to understand ultimately from every facet what's working and what's not. Now, Mike's going to talk about this, but fairing sits into our monthly as well, because we want to understand what the customer is saying about our products. Are they actually doing what are they actually engaging with them? Are they hearing about us somewhere? How are they using our products, and what brought them to the site to begin with? So platform tells you why, the customer voice tells you what, the customer voice tells you why. So like I said, most teams run on just the first three layers: platform, MTA, MMM, incrementality. They stop. They tell you what's working, but they don't tell you what the customer was thinking, what stopped them, where they heard about you. And I think it's an important piece of the business that gets really forgotten very consistently. So for us, it changes with creative. So think about this: if we had ad A beats ad B and we feel like it's great, we get to see why it worked. We can start to think around the language that was used, and then take advantage of things customers are saying in their post-purchase surveys to actually help brief themes into the next round of creative, so that way we're compounding signals. I'm going to deviate for a little bit because we talk about ad creative a lot. And right now, the flavor of the month is use AI to create all kinds of ad creative. I was just listening to a podcast and someone said that they make 4,000 ad creative a month and they run it. And while that sounds great, and it is fascinating that we can use AI to do that, there is still a cost to test creative. I would rather make 300 ad creative that I know work really, really well than 4,000 creative that I don't know if they're going to perform. And so for us, we monitor something called creative win rate, which is how often did the ad creative that we put in market actually scale? And we want to be able to show you that we can brief you well and be able to actually scale your business and help you understand your customer better. It's why we're named Query. We believe media can actually answer really hard questions. And one of those questions is, why do people buy from us? What should they buy from us? And how do we spend against that? And that's where not throwing spaghetti at the wall is really important. And the more information that we can actually engage with, get background on, ask our customers of, the better. So that's where I think asking your customers what worked, why did they buy from you, how did they hear about you, is just the most valuable thing you can do for creative. Similarly, it's really important for channel investment. Attribution is not straightforward. We know it. Customer voice is great at covering things like podcasts and newsletter and creators and word of mouth and friends and family and gifting. I can't. It's like May right now. We're already talking Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday gifting with a lot of our clients, and voice of customer, when we ask right now, who did you buy for? Did you buy for a spouse? Did you buy for a friend? That allows us to make strategies as we come into the holidays around, okay, well, we need ad creative that talks to buy for your friend or is great for a white elephant. Things like that become really, really valuable that you're not going to be able to just make up on the fly. And you want to make sure that you have an understanding of how your customer actually uses and engages with your business. It also helps on the CFO side. Storytelling is key. And when you can actually show data around how your customers are discovering the brand and then using that evidence for defending the spend is working. Brand spend is difficult to measure. It is hard to manage. Being able to show, hey, when we were in market for this engagement, our word of mouth increased by 30%. That is something you can do. You don't need to say, hey, this was one-to-one. I'm not looking at my return on ad spend, but luckily customer voice and post-purchase survey can give you directional insights and build one more level of trust with the investments. And that's what we're trying to do. Marketing is inherently messy. Media is inherently messy. The goal is to build incremental trust with yourselves and your CFO, and just know that you're pointed in the North Star. You will not always get the bullseye. So, Mike, with that, I'm going to pass it over to you. So let's talk around how that actually comes to life.
Well, cool. Well, first and foremost, Samir, Colin, thanks so much for having me. Just as a quick intro on myself, I'm Mike. I lead partnerships at a brand and agency level here at Fairing, and we work with brands and the measurement partners they trust to help close one specific gap in the modern attribution today. So to continue on everything that Samir just talked through, the thesis on my side for the next 15 minutes is a continuation of attribution is incredibly hard to manage in 2026. From juggling pixels, UTMs, promo codes, MMMs, and platform reports, each one of those being designed for a different question, each one telling you a different part of the story. And of course, the work synthesizing all of that data has just gotten more complex every year. So what I want to do today is just walk you through where that structural gap is, show you a real brand example of what that gap costs them, and then just kind of share a practical framework that can be put into place to help really consolidating the efforts that the marketing teams are doing here. Go to the next slide. There we go. Just real quick context on Fairing before we kind of get into the how, because we're not really a traditional post-purchase survey app, and I just want you to have the right framework before I show you what unlocks from post-purchase surveys. So we work with about 3,500 different brands. We process about 45 million customer survey transactions a month. And that matters tremendously because we're not just collecting responses. We're normalizing data across every store that we work with. We're benchmarking channels. We're cleaning influencer and podcast names. And then more importantly, we're building models on top of that response data as well. So the way to think about us isn't really just a survey widget. It's a measurement infrastructure that sits alongside your MMM, your MTA, your pixels, and providing signals that those tools can't see on their own. And as a North Star for us, we believe that we are as trusted as a meta conversion pixel. Every purchase, every app download, every mortgage application, we believe you should know exactly where that customer come from. That's the mission, and really the post-purchase is just the vehicle to get there. The problem behind all of this, to continue with what Samir was talking about, is just that the marketing stack is drowning in complexity. So the left side of it is what the day-to-day looks like for marketing teams, head of growth, holdout tests, promo codes, platform reports, attributions, MMMs, all of these are designed to do what they do incredibly well. So MMMs being for, channel level budget allocation, that's their jobs and they do it really good. Pixels are deterministic at click attribution. UTMs and promo codes are great for known source tracking. None of these tools are broken. The challenge isn't that any of them are wrong. The challenge is what's not covered by any of them. And that's the right column. There is no technical mechanism to capture a podcast listener. There's no mechanism by which someone scrolling past your ads on your friend's TikTok becomes a tracked user. And there's no mechanism by which actual organic influencer posts, not the swipe ups, the post itself, becomes a tracked user at the end of the day. So what really happens here is that those impressions do happen. The awareness happens. The customer remembers it, but then they search your brand on Google 3 days later, click on your branded search result, and then they buy. And so every dashboard you have including the ones that work great for their specific jobs, that conversion credit at the end of the day is going to go to Google. It's not a bug in these tools. It's just a structural limit on click-based measurement itself. So they can only see what they can see. The thing that nobody in this stack measures well at the moment is awareness for channels that don't generate a click. And so the downstream of that, of course, is for folks that work in this space day to day, is that marketing teams, argue over budget because their numbers don't agree, or brand teams who struggle to kind of prove what's actually driving growth. Creator and audio teams get their budgets cut because they can't show ROAS the way performance cans, or ultimately just kind of teams end up defaulting to an MER kind of result because nothing else kind of reconciles. So the gap that post-purchase surveys fill is not replacing any of these tools, but really just adding a layer to capture results that these tools were never designed to capture. The solution to all of this is to ask your customers. Your customers have the answers, and that's where post-purchase surveys come into play and deliver the strongest results for your team. So one source of truth that doesn't have click-based attribution is your customer. They know why they purchased, they remember why they purchased, and they can tell you exactly what made them buy if you ask them at the right moment. And that right moment is post-purchase. They've just made the decision, they've just engaged with your brand, they've opened their wallet, and now you have maybe 60 seconds of their conscious attention on that order confirmation page to ask them those types of questions. So their responses aren't just a vibe, it's really a structured data point that's joined to the customer's order, their UTM, their LTV cohort. You can pivot that data, you can join it in your warehouse, you can ship it to Meta as a custom audiences. But the conceptual unlock of that is that post-purchase isn't a replacement for any of these tools. It's the layer that sits alongside them. Pixels still stay great at clicks. MMM stay great at channel level allocation. Post-purchase survey just adds awareness signal that's been missing. So all three layers work great together. None of them is enough on its own. Here's a specific brand example. And if you remember one slide from today, I hope that's this one. This was a $2 billion fashion brand. These are real numbers from Q4 of last year, anonymized for obvious reasons, but these are directly sourced from their team to us. Look at the box on the left. That's really the highlight of this. They're the three numbers. So 34 orders where Snap was the last click. The customer clicked a Snap ad, they came to the site, they bought pure clean attribution. That bottom number, 14 orders, is where Snap shows up in both signals. The customer clicked through and told us in the post-purchase survey that Snap is how they heard about the brand, 14. That middle number, 1,668 orders, is where Snap was the answer to a how did you hear about a survey, but that click never came from anywhere. 1,688 versus 34. That's a 49x undercount of Snap's contribution to this brand in particular. And that table on the right, that's where those 1,668 orders actually last clicked. Real data, Snap heard from the customer, but the click is showing up as a referral path, as direct Google, as a shop app, as a Google branded search. Point is those were inaccurately tracked back to the original source of that, where that attribution should have been delivered to. And so here's that journey we now see across thousands of brands. Tuesday night, customers scroll Snap, they see your ad on a creator, they don't click, they might not even register the brand name conscientiously. But Thursday morning, they're standing in line for coffee, your brand pops into their head and they Google you. And again, that whole story of where Google, of course, is going to capture that and ultimately deliver the wrong attribution source to where it should have been delivered to. So with this data here, if you were to multiply this specific journey of the 1,668 orders at that 116 AOV on that right side, that's roughly $193,000 of Q4 revenue attributed to this brand that was given to the wrong channel. One quarter, one channel. Now, if you extrapolate this across YouTube, TikTok, audio, CTV, influencers, every upper funnel channel has this exact same problem. Yeah, thanks. And it just to kind of close this, the reaction isn't curiosity, it's kind of horror, because they realize that these decisions are driven strictly off this data, and so much of that data can be inaccurately captured. So by having a post-purchase survey kind of in this middle, working alongside your other tools, this is what really, again, defines the true source of what's working well in your marketing mix and how to continue to scale that at the right levels. Same gap, just at a different lens here. This is looking at it from a creator portfolio decision. This was a study that was just published by Agentio last week, who we partnered deeply with, that essentially is given an example of some top influencers that they work with, and kind of that decision that every brand faces, which is which influencers do you kind of want to renew. The navy bar is showing where pixels and PPS captured this data together correctly, excuse me. The blue is capturing where pixels just caught them, and then that kind of that darker blue is really just where PPS missed them entirely. So if this, as an example for this, if this brand had only run pixels, 3 of their top 10 creators would have been cut. And creator 6 in particular, Pixel said 0.2x return on ROAS, customer said 5.2. So same creator, same campaign. We're just, again, triangulating that customer voice into decision to help truly show the accurate results. And 73% of post-purchase responses are net new orders Pixels never saw. So we really are capturing such high intent to the reasons that your customers are purchasing from your brand. Quickly on the product, just to show how this works, not in a demo format, but just to kind of lay the foundation of how this is triangulating this data back from the customer voice. So the questions live on your thank you or your order status page, and customers typically answer in 3 seconds. Where we take it a step deeper is this kind of concatenated pair. So if it's an influencer, it's what influencer. If it's podcast, it's what podcast. That if then this statement kind of really helps us to be able to drill down on that specific lift in terms of where this is actually going to be influenced back to the purchaser for the path of this customer coming through the door. So most typical response rates, 50+ response rates, the intelligent question logic behind it, and then of course the marketing grid analysis behind the scenes to then be able to push this into your stack. In terms of getting going with something as simple as this, with any sort of post-purchase survey, there's really 5 core questions that can be asked to start immediately driving results and a deeper understanding of your customers. That first one, of course, is going to be, how did you hear about us? That full attribution source. Where did you first come to, understand about our brand? How did you hear about us? And then taking that a step further is like, what brought you back to the store? So for returning customers, you could ask them the second question, and that's really kind of giving that long-term, that lifetime value signal in terms of how these folks keep coming back and interacting it. That third question, the conversion rate optimization one, is such an important piece to have on any sort of website. And what that's really telling you is if there are any difficulties or any past barrier for your customers purchasing on your website. That fourth, the main reason you decided to purchase today, of course, tying that back into measurement. And then another one for product teams that are really liking at this time is like, what additional products would you like us to develop? Help understand the demand directly from your customers and allow your teams to influence decisions internally on what products are being built from there. And then just a quick testimonial in terms of how Fairing's working in the day-to-day stack. So this is what it looks like. Thorne's a supplement brand, household name in the wellness space. They ran a UFC partnership this year. And UFC partnerships are the exact kind of activations that are hard to measure. They're high visibility, brand level. Customers see the logo on the octagon and the fighter is wearing the gear, but very few of them click anything. So the classic blind spot of what we've been talking about. Rajiv and the team, that run our growth at Thorne, the quote on the left tells you the strategic value. They're treating UFC as the blueprint for expanding into other sports and league partnerships. And Fairing is really just the tool that validates whether that blueprint is working before they double down on that next decision. So that number on that right, the concrete one, the 9.4% higher AOV from UFC attributed customers, not a small lift at all. That's the kind of exact signal that justifies a renewal and informs that next partnership decision. This is what it looks like when customers' voice becomes part of how the real brand makes investment calls. And then lastly, of course, what you do with the data is just as important as the data itself. So where does the data go? Really, it goes everywhere that your team's already making decisions. Pushes to Meta for audience seeds, Klaviyo for lifecycle, GA4 for unidentified reporting, TikTok, BigQuery, anywhere that you want to place this customer data. It's important that it's being used, and it's important that it's being used in the stack that you're already used to on a day-to-day basis. So if it ends up in a CSV and nobody opens it, it didn't work, but this is really meant to be placed exactly where your team's looking at day-to-day. And that about wraps it up from me. So back to you, over you, Colin and Samir.
Amazing. Thanks.
Incredible.
Let's do, all right. So from our end, 3 things to do by Monday or tomorrow. Audit what your platform data is not telling you. So list the questions on your dashboard, see how people are actually hearing about you, what stopped them, who else did they consider? These are all measurement gaps, right? Get some customer voice instrument running, post-purchase surveys, absolutely key. Some of our clients have customer councils where they literally talk to customers, and there's just so much value in that. The key piece here is just build a synthesis cadence. The total amount of times that the data is collected but nothing is done with is really it's a shame, to be honest. And so find a way to actually use the data, and make sure that it's actually being set aside, put next to marketing data altogether, and just helping guide the future. From our end, ready to test your measurement. So two things. So Query runs benchmark sessions, 60-minute working session. We'll review your paid media against our benchmarks. So you can go to the benchmark URL here. And then Mike Farron was so kind to give us 1 month free. If you sign up, use the code Query30, QRY30, sign up and get a month. We are big fans of Farron and highly recommend it. All right, Colin, I think we are on to Q&A. Any questions that are coming around or anything?
I have a question. Mike,
could
could you talk to me a little bit about, if I'm a brand and I'm scaling up, you brought up Snapchat specifically, Snap as it's called, that's what the kids are calling it these days. I want to be cool. Is there a channel that I should be testing where you're going to find that clear ROI that you've seen in the data from Faring, where you've seen, hey, whenever anybody tests this, there's a clear lift that's actually not measured in platform reporting that we see really consistently, whether that's Snapchat, et cetera?
Yeah, I think really where Faring drives initial significant high ROI and immediate value back is, of course, in the audio and kind of podcast realm specifically. If you think about just how many organic conversations come up on the big podcasts, where a podcast host will drop a brand that they're subtly talking about, it then kind of gets put into the mix, and folks are really kind of picking up on that key conversation and really starting to make purchases based off of that. It's incredibly important context for brands to hear back directly and understand exactly what's going to influence their next partnership, their next podcast buy, their next audio buy, whatever it may be. But really those subtle areas where click-based is just not in the mix really, really helps drive immediate value back to their teams.
That's incredible. So when your brand gets featured on Joe Rogan, you have to have Faring in order to capture all of that.
To know exactly where it came from. Exactly.
Amazing. Samir, follow-up question for you. I mean, you talked a little bit about brand voice and kind of crafting a brand voice. How am I, if I'm a $10 to $15 million brand and I actually don't know my brand voice, how do I figure it out? What's my first step in figuring out my brand voice? I don't know who I am yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most interesting thing, I love using voice of customer for this too, because you want to hear, we have a saying, everyone puts these like brand books together and it's like, here's who our brand is. And the rule of thumb is you don't get to define your brand, your customers define your brand, right?
Nice.
So ask your customers what they think about you. You may think, we're seen as high quality products. And then you're going to ask, your customers are like, oh no, we bought you because you were the cheapest. And it's like, okay, well, great. That is a very different reality than the expectation. My favorite is fashion brands do this all the time. They'll come out and say, hey, our core demographic, the people who purchase from us are 25 to 35 really fashionable women. And then you like come back and you're like, oh no, it was 45 to 55 plus because they're the only ones that can afford it. And so it's that like understanding that you can really unlock by just talking to the customer, and post-purchase survey is a great way to just simplify that process.
I love that. Mike, following up with you on here for these post-purchase questions. I mean, there's a quote that basically says your life is shifting dramatically with a better set of questions. You just have to be able to ask the right questions in order to make that kind of shift. Can you talk to me about some just absurd questions that you've seen brands use before, but have actually worked, where you said, this is kind of crazy. I don't know if you should be asking this, but at the end of the day, it actually worked out really well for the brand. Yeah. And you kind of took a note internally and you're like, actually, this is a really good question to start asking.
I think one of my favorite ones is, it's used pretty popularly, but it's a question that says, what almost prevented you from purchasing from us today, or some iteration of like, what almost stopped you from doing it? And it's kind of similar to that CRO use case where you're really trying to understand any of the barriers on the website, but now you're just hearing directly from the customer, whether it was a competitor, that almost got their attention a little bit better or what it might be, but it really just drives significant insights into any barriers that the team might not have been available or might not have understood deeply. But to hear the direct customer insight on any preventive methods for purchasing is just incredibly insightful. So that's an interesting one that some teams use and see some really insightful value from it.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice one. I'm sure you've also recorded some crazy internal answers as well from just the treasure trove of data you guys are sitting on.
Yeah.
Samira, a follow-up question to you is, say I am a 10 to $15 million brand. I'm scaling up. I'm starting to hit some kind of initial ceilings, and I want to test out a new channel. What channel are you most excited about in 2026 where you would say, okay, let's actually spend, maybe we're going to test out 5 to 10% of your budget and start to test out in this channel here in 2026?
Yeah, it's interesting because we believe in channel diversity because it reduces risk, but I also
Yeah,
don't believe in channel diversity too early. So
right.
Meta and Google should absolutely be able to scale you relatively far, right? Like
Yeah.
those two alone. What comes right after that, generally for us, is some CTV partner.
Great.
And that's where we're buying CTV either directly because we already know what channels are going to work, or shotgunning it to identify what channels are going to work, and then running like direct to those channels. I think CTV is a huge opportunity right now because CPMs are still relatively cheap, and
Yeah.
it still feels big to have a TV ad, right? And so there's just like a network effect on that. This is where things like post purchase end up becoming really valuable, and measurement just ends up becoming really valuable because uh, our biggest obstacle for getting CTV live and funded is not creative or anything other than the fact that it's hard to get clients to trust that it will work because it is a difficult to measure channel. And so our key things. So one, if you're running CTV, and you're seeing really wild results from your partner, give us a call because they are probably doing this thing that drives us nuts. Is they're running CTV and companion banner ads and then giving you results on the companion banner ads, which are all view through. So a companion banner ad is like a display ad that follows you around, and everyone says, "Hey, I showed this ad to somebody that watched the CTV commercial," and then we follow them around with display banner ads, and that's fine. But there's so many better ways to do it, and more importantly, you should be have a better understanding of what your TV ad is actually delivering and what your banner ad is actually delivering, and then optimize differently. So that's step one. And so because measurement is so difficult, the only people that actually invest in CTV are the ones that inherently feel like it works and they trust marketing and they know that they'll do it. Or the start stops, which they start it, they don't see the results right away, and they turn it off. So that's what ends up happening.
Wow. I have a very good friend in CTV, and he said you can get $8 CPMs on there. That's pretty alluring. I mean, that's pretty spicy when Meta's offering $60 CPMs and everything above that.
It always comes down to just time. Like CTV is the Wild West right now, which is why it is fascinating. So sometimes if it's too good to be true, you got to dig into it and find out why it might be the case.
Mike, I selfishly have a follow-up question for you as well. I think that we're seeing the shift happen right now with all the LLMs, all of AI and, ChatGPT, Claude, all of that. And now you're seeing brands actually surface as a result. How have you seen that as a kind of as floating into an answer for fairing for questions where AI is starting to become kind of that answer over the past, say year, 2 years? How has that trend been kind of moving for you guys?
Hockey stick up into the right, like just
Oh, wow.
dramatically. In terms of like the feedback that customers are now able to get from having an AI search result directly in their customer or post-purchase survey has been dramatic. So they're really able to understand, how the AI is not only surfacing the brand itself, but also influencing the decision behind it, and also kind of just doing that behind the scene type of sale for the client on their behalf too. So really interesting to see the results that clients are gleaming from just having their customers, basically say that AI has had an influence on this, and that's ultimately what led to the purchase decision of this, and no advertising was needed in the mix. So definitely a new insight that customers are looking at a little bit deeper.
It's really interesting, Mike. I'd be so curious for fairing. This is a report that you guys can pull together. Is when somebody client came in through an LLM, what were the responses versus when they came in through a channel where the brand owns the messaging, right?
Ooh.
Like what is that difference, and how different is it?
Yeah, I think we could run something like that and just include it as a follow-up. Let me ping that by Matt and we'll get something out. Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be
Let's
super
go.
cool. Because I think that that's like where AEO comes in, right? Like right now, you as a brand owner have no control or limited control over what the LLM says to you. So going back to your brand question, Colin, at one point, it's not even going to be like you, the brand, putting that messaging out there. It's going to be whatever the LLM thinks about you, because that's what it's telling customers.
Well, Samir, that was going to be my follow-up question to you is if I'm a brand that's in that 10 to $15 million range, I know in 2026, I have to be focusing on AI. I have to be making sure that I'm at the forefront of this. How do I position myself in AEO with my brand and not basically lose sight of the main thing, but still prepare as we kind of build out this channel moving forward?
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because we are just coming out of the everything is performance marketing era and entering into the brand and performance. That's why Query exists. It's what we do. It's we connect brand marketing and performance marketing. And I think that brand marketing is now getting the limelight it deserves, especially because that's what drives LLMs. When
Yeah.
you are part of the zeitgeist, when people are talking about you, when you do big engagements that build word of mouth and online buzz, that's what fuels the LLMs. So, people ask us like, hey, why don't you guys do AEO? Well, because technical AEO is really straightforward. We do AEO. It's through brand marketing. It's when we get, we did a big brand campaign and you got 30 pieces of PR around it, and now your brand was solidified around that. So that's the thing. AEO on your site only goes so far. You're just hitting the water's edge. The reality of it is, why do big brands get referenced the most? It's because they have the most information out there for the LLMs to reference.
That's incredible. Mike, my final follow-up question to you is what is exciting coming out of Fairing in 2026? What should we be looking for? What are you guys shipping? Can you toss a little beta feature that you might be dropping? Can we hear
Yeah,
some little gems? What's going on over there?
a lot of exciting stuff coming up at Fairing too. So starting to work on ingested spend, basically being able to be a ROAS source of truth, essentially directly within Fairing separately itself. Obviously, continuing our integration path and just pushing with new ones out to Agentio, as I kind of mentioned during my speech. We just pushed that out last week, but really just trying to drive the creator economy all together. So bringing Fairing data, being able to splice that, push that to where the teams are working at the most. So on top of ingested spend and ROAS, like we're really just amping up our integrations page to make it easier for the teams doing this on a day-to-day basis.
That's
So
incredible.
a lot to be announced coming down the line.
Amazing. And then Samir, same for you. What are we excited about in 2026? What's going to be going with all the things?
Query's doubling down on AI media buying. So we've built Athena, which is our AI media buying platform. So all the data is there for our teams. It's leveraging signals. It's giving us insights into what's working, what's not working. And then honestly, just continuing to be the subject matter expert. We have a perspective on AI in that AI is accelerating everything, but strategy becomes even more important than ever before, because AI will absolutely accelerate you towards the wrong strategy. So
Ooh.
media expertise is just becoming more and more important. And so I think brands should really think around how they are bringing in experts that really understand where media needs to go, and how to actually use AI to accelerate them to their North Star versus diverge them from their goals.
Accelerating in the wrong direction. That is extra spicy. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for your time. I know you guys are so busy. We appreciate everybody who watched this. We're going to get everybody the bits and clips after this. If you want to reach out to anybody directly, you can shoot us direct messages on LinkedIn. We'll get you connected with everybody and make sure your brand is going up and to the right in the rest of 2026. Thank you guys so much, and we appreciate you. See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.